Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy you're here. If you're new here, hit the like and subscribe button, hit that bell so you know whenever I post a video. We talk about all types of stuff here. We talk about culture, politics, pop culture, lifestyle, annoying stuff throughout the day, everything, honey child. So we talk about it. Please subscribe. Push this channel out into the algorithm. I would love for you to join us. We're going to talk about the debate between Governor Tim Walz and who's the vice president-elect for the Democratic side, and J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's vice president pick, if you can even actually call this man that. With that being said, we're going to get right into it. I'm not going to spend too much time on J.D. Vance, okay? Let me go ahead and explain my reasoning behind that. I feel like there's not that much that I need to say. Donald Trump is a convicted felon, a racist, white supremacist excuser, convicted felon, someone who tried to overturn our Constitution, destroy American democracy. I don't know where to start. So if you're still voting for this guy, I seriously think you need to have a come to Jesus moment. You know, talk to whoever your faith leader is. Talk to whoever, you know, is your support circle, your therapist, your family members, and just have a deep reflection on that. So with that being said, I do want to take a look at everything that Tim Walz did right, because I've been looking at a lot of media coverage about this. While I do really, by the way, who won this debate? Obviously Tim Walz won this debate, but truly Marcus Johnson. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. I know those of you who watch the readout on MSNBC, you know what I'm talking about. Marcus Johnson, he kicked butt. He's a student, I think. He's a political science major. Anyway, some stuff on social media. He had some commentary. Just look it up. Tim Walz basically came in with the thunder of intellect, you know, and sort of that sort of dad wisdom, you know, like I guess that's the best way to describe it. I've described him before, and I love that Vice President Harris picked Tim Walz as her running mate. I think they're going to win this thing. I'm doing everything to get them elected, because we don't need American democracy destroyed by Donald Trump and the likes of him. I have volunteered. I have donated. I'm going to do everything that I can to get them elected. So Tim Walz, I love the fact that he has this military background. I love the fact that he supports women's rights, women's health care rights. I love that he's also a military man, so he has respect for what the responsibilities and the joy that comes with being a gun owner, you know, but at the same time he looks at it in a more sort of like responsible way, I would say, than a lot of the Republicans with their thoughts and prayers. You know, all the school shootings, the public shootings, the mass shootings, like we clearly need to change some things, and I think he has the vision to help with that. I think he also is just a sturdy running mate for President Harris. He understands foreign policy. He understands, you know, Social Security, health care, the horrible overturning of Roe versus Wade. I mean, I could talk about the guy for days. And then you've got Vice President Harris. She beasted out on the Infrastructure Act with Joe Biden. And, you know, people are always talking about, oh, the economy is doing so bad, and climate change is a hoax. But so if they're so, you know, happy about climate change, why aren't they doing anything about it? They have done the Infrastructure Act, the Chips and Science Act. She's going to continue that work of building bridges, of building up American infrastructure. They brought back manufacturing. They brought back big manufacturing to the U.S. President Harris is going to continue that work. She's going to help get Roe versus Wade put back into place. She said she will sign it into law. She will not excuse white supremacists. She's not a racist. She's not a convicted felon. I mean, it's like, what else do you need to know? On top of that, she has an amazing track record as a prosecutor, as a DA, as a vice president. She helped pull us out of COVID. You know, like, I don't think people understand how bad the economy was doing when Joe Biden and Vice President Harris inherited it from Donald Trump. But on top of that, you know, I'm a millennial. Like, things are changing, you know. It's not like just jamming every day and going to raves anymore. Like, my husband and I want to buy a house. We want to have a lot of kids. Maybe, I don't know. I want to have a lot of kids. Maybe he doesn't want to have that many. You know, we'll meet somewhere in between. But we want to expand our family. Want to buy a house. We want to, like, you know, grow a business. Like, those are the things that the Harris-Walz campaign is going to help us with, while Donald Trump and his rich cronies will just continue to destroy the working and middle class. Military-wise, we're going to end up in a world war with this Putin, sympathizer Donald Trump, whereas President Harris, Tim Walz, they're strong. They're strong. And I heard someone, I think it was on PBS NewsHour, they were like, oh, we asked a question about Iran, and Tim Walz had a shaky start. I'm like, are you kidding me? Dude, they did the same thing to President Biden when he had a debate. And this is where I cannot stand the media, the mainstream media in some ways, and blue MAGA. These people who are always trying to both sides everything. And you're not listening to the substantive stuff that Tim Walz is saying. They did the same thing to Biden. Biden, he won that debate on substance. He won that debate on speaking on strong foreign policy, on strong domestic policy, on being like a logical politician, like who's going to actually help the American people. But no, they're focused on if they trip up on a word, or, if they a little bit of spit plops on their lip. It's like, dude, stop with this BS. So in my book, Tim Walz won this whole thing. I've described him in the past as sort of like a mixture between Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, and Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation. I really, really, really like the guy. And where people were saying on PBS he had a shaky start, I actually saw, like, he had his lips pursed, honey. He was like every single lie that came out of J.D. Vance's mouth. Okay, J.D. Vance lies a little bit less than Donald Trump, but the dude still friggin' lies. Every single lie and, like, gross exaggeration and gross, like, shirking and tiptoeing around an answer and, like, non-answers that he gave, Tim Walz was not there for it. He Ron Swansoned his butt all the way. Like, it was not shaky. It was just, like, a very matter-of-fact, Ron Swanson-y, sarcastic, like, that is absolutely asinine. Let me give you the facts now, And that's what we need in a vice president. Okay, President Harris, maybe she's a little bit more like pop sizzle fizz than Tim Walz. But Tim Walz is also a great support. You can see that he's a great support. He understands the foreign policy. He understands the domestic policy. Anyway. So let's take a look at this, guys. I want to know what you guys think. What did you think about the debate? We're not going to watch everything. I really do not want to cover too much of what J.D. Vance said. I'll only cover, I think three things. Three things that he did, that he said, that I wanted to talk with you guys in depth about. And by the way, guys, if you are millennial, Gen Z, if you are, baby boomer, whoever you are, how old you are, where you live, please register to vote, okay? This is the most important election of our lifetime. We need to vote President Harris, Tim Walz into office to keep America strong, to keep America a democracy. So go to vote411.org and register to vote, okay? So let's take a look at this.
Margaret. Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Governor Walz, if you were the final voice in the Situation Room, would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those joining at home tonight. Let's keep in mind where this started. October 7th, Hamas terrorists massacred over 1,400 Israelis and took prisoners.
Ready.
Israel's ability to be able to defend itself is absolutely fundamental. Getting its hostages back, fundamental, and ending the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. But the expansion of Israel and its proxies is an absolute fundamental necessity for the United States to have the steady leadership there. You saw it experienced today, where along with our Israeli partners and our coalition, able to stop the incoming attack. But what's fundamental here is that steady leadership is going to matter. It's clear, and the world saw it on that debate stage a few weeks ago, a nearly 80-year-old Donald Trump talking about crowd sizes is not what we need in this moment. But it's not just that. It's those that were closest to Donald Trump that understand how dangerous he is when the world is this dangerous.
Yes.
His chief of staff, John Kelly, said that he was the most flawed human being he'd ever met. And both of his secretaries of defense and
so the Middle East
his
might
national
be bad
security
right
advisors
now,
said he should
we'll
be
be in a
nowhere
world war
near
with
the
Donald
White
Trump,
House.
in other
Now, the
words.
person closest to them, Donald Trump,
and don't forget
said he's unfit for the
about the documents
highest
he
office.
stole
That was
concerning
Senator
Iran.
Vance. What we've seen out of Vice President Harris is we've seen steady leadership. We've seen a calmness that is able to draw on the coalitions to bring them together, understanding that our allies matter. When our allies see Donald Trump turn towards Vladimir Putin, turn towards North Korea, when we start to see that type of fickleness around holding the coalitions together, we will stay committed. And as the Vice President said today we will protect our forces and our allied forces, and there will be consequences.
Governor, your time
is up. Let me
is
pause right there. Okay, so you just heard a totally sober, acceptable, perfect answer on foreign policy concerning Iran and how we, as an ally of Israel, should approach this disruption that's happening in the Middle East and substantive plans on how to approach that. They asked the same questions to J.D. Vance. Let's listen to this, okay? Let's listen to this drivel.
Senator Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me, and she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over 100
All right, we can stop right there. He basically has absolutely nothing to say. He goes on with the same speaking points as Donald Trump. Oh, the world is on fire, even though we were the ones with the with the gas can and the match. The world is on fire, and we've got to make the world great again. Same crap. But you see there, like, okay, I just timed that to be almost 2 minutes. You know, no, a minute and a half of him talking about growing up in nowhere. I'm sorry, growing up in nowhere and his grandma, and you know, like that's not what we were asking about. And that right there shows you that these are not serious people. These are not serious people who are going to help govern for people like me, millennials, Gen Z, who we have just entered into the workforce or have only been in the workforce 5 to 10 years. We're trying to focus on our future. A lot of these people are focused on the past, you know, like their future has been made, well done. They've had their kids, they've had their grandkids, they bought their houses, they bought their cars, they've started their businesses. A lot of us, we're still at the beginning of those hallmarks, and we're having our rights taken away as women. transgender homosexual people are being essentially stoned in the middle of the street, and books are being banned, and you know, like white supremacists are marching the streets saying Jews will not replace us. It's like, dude, this is a turning point. This is an inflection point, and he's sitting here talking drivel. He's talking drivel to his base. That's what they always do. They only talk to their base. They never ever actually talk to the American people. So here, I'm going to go ahead and skip to here.
Now to immigration. The crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border consistently ranks as one of the top issues for American voters. Senator Vance, your campaign is pledging to carry out the largest mass deportation plan in American history and to use the U.S. military to do so. Could you be more specific about exactly how this will work? For example, would you deport parents who have entered the U.S. illegally and separate them from any of their children who were born on U.S. soil? You have 2 minutes.
So first of all, Margaret, before we talk about deportations, we have to stop the bleeding. We have a historic immigration crisis because Kamala Harris started and said that she wanted to undo all of Donald Trump's border policies. 94 executive orders suspending deportations, decriminalizing illegal aliens, massively increasing the asylum fraud that exists in our system. That has opened the floodgates. And what it's meant is that a lot of fentanyl is coming into our country. I had a mother who struggled with opioid addiction and has gotten clean. I don't want people who are struggling with addiction to be deprived of their second chance because Kamala Harris let in fentanyl into our communities at record levels. So you've got to stop the bleeding. You've got to re-implement Donald Trump's border policies, build the wall, re-implement deportations, and that gets me to your point, Margaret, about what do we actually do? So we've got 25 million illegal aliens who are here in the country. What do we do with them? I think the first thing that we do is we start with the criminal migrants. About 1 million of those people have committed some form of crime in addition to crossing the border illegally. I think you start with deportations on those folks. And then I think you make it harder for illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. A lot of people will go home if they can't work for less than minimum wage in our own country. And by the way, that'll be really good for our workers who just want to earn a fair wage for doing a good day's work. And the final point, Margaret, is you ask about family separation. Right now in this country, Margaret, we have 320,000 children that the Department of Homeland Security has effectively lost. Some of them have been sex trafficked. Some of them hopefully are at homes with their families. Some of them have been used as drug trafficking mules. The real family separation policy in this country is unfortunately Kamala Harris's wide open southern border. And I'd ask my fellow Americans to remember when she came into office, she said she was going to do this. Real leadership would be saying, you know what, I screwed up. We're going to go back to Donald Trump's border policies. I wish that she would do that. It would be good for all of us.
Governor, do you care to respond to any of those specific allegations, including that the vice president is, quote, letting in fentanyl and using kids as drug mules, among other things regarding children?
The drug mule is not true, but I will say about this, about the fentanyl, because this is a crisis of this, the opioid crisis. And the good news on this is the last 12 months saw the largest decrease in opioid deaths in our nation's history.
Because Biden Harris is actually doing something about it.
But there's still more work to do. But let's go back to this on immigration. Kamala Harris was the Attorney General of the largest state and a border state in California. She's the only person in this race who prosecuted transnational gangs for human trafficking and drug interventions. But look, we all want to solve this. Most of us want to solve this, and that is the United States Congress. That's the Border Patrol agents. That's the Chamber of Commerce. That's most Americans out here. That's why we had the fairest and the toughest bill on immigration that this nation's seen. It was crafted by conservative senator from Oklahoma, James Lankford. I know him, he's super conservative, but he's a man of principle, wants to get it done. Democrats and Republicans worked on this piece of legislation. The Border Patrol said, this is what we need in here. These are the experts. And the Chamber of Commerce and the Wall Street Journal said, pass this thing. Kamala Harris helped get there. 1,500 new border agents. Detection for drugs. DOJ money to speed up.
Even though we live in a constitutional democracy
adjudications on this, just what America wants. But as soon as I was getting ready to pass and actually tackle this, Donald Trump said no, told them to vote against it because it gives him a campaign issue. It gives him to, what would Donald Trump talk about if we actually did some of these things? And they need to be done by the legislature. You can't just do this through the executive branch. So look, we have the options to do this. Donald Trump had 4 years. He had 4 years to do this. And he promised you, America, how easy it would be. I'll build you a big, beautiful wall, and Mexico will pay for it. Less than 2% of that wall got built, and Mexico didn't pay a dime. But here we are again, 9 years after he came down that escalator, dehumanizing people and telling him what he was going to do. As far as the deportation plan, at one point, Senator Vance said it was so unworkable to be laughable.
Listen to this,
so
y'all.
That's where we're at. Pass the bill,
Tim Walz
she'll sign it.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, the question was, will you separate parents from their children, even if their kids are U.S. citizens? You have 1 minute.
Margaret, my point is that we already have massive child separations thanks to Kamala Harris's open border. And I didn't accuse Kamala Harris of inviting drug mules. I said that she enabled the Mexican drug cartels to operate freely in this country. And we know that they use children as drug mules, and it is a disgrace, and it has to stop. Look, I think what Tim said just doesn't pass the smell test. For 3 years, Kamala Harris went out bragging that she was going to undo Donald Trump's border policy. She did exactly that. We had a record number of illegal crossings. We had a record number of fentanyl coming into our country. And now that she's running for president, or a few months before, she says that somehow she got religion and cared a lot about a piece of legislation. The only thing that she did when she became the vice president, when she became the appointed border czar, was to undo 94 Donald Trump executive actions that opened the border. This problem is leading to massive problems in the United States of America. Parents who can't afford health care, schools that are overwhelmed. It's got to stop, and it will when Donald Trump is president.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, what about our CBS News polling, which does show that a majority of Americans, more than 50%, support mass deportations?
Look, we fix this issue with a bill that is necessary, but the issue on this is what happens when you don't want to solve it. You demonize it. And we saw this, and Senator Vance, and it surprises me on this, talking about and saying, I will create stories to bring attention to this. That vilified a large number of people who were here legally in the community of Springfield.
Thank you.
The Republican governor said, it's not true, don't do it. There's consequences for this.
And
There's
they kept doing
We could come together. Senator Langford did it. We could come together and solve this if we didn't let Donald Trump continue to make it an issue. And the consequences in Springfield were the governor had to send state law enforcement to escort kindergartners to school. I believe Senator Vance wants to solve this, but by standing with Donald Trump and not working together to find a solution, it becomes a talking point. And when it becomes a talking point like this, we dehumanize and villainize other human beings.
This is probably the most important part of the debate.
Governor, your time is up. Senator, I'll give you 1 minute, but let me just ask you the question first. The governor has made the point, and I think as a sitting lawmaker, you know that Congress controls the purse strings and any funding. So you have said repeatedly that Donald Trump would, through executive action, solve this. Do you disagree that Congress controls the purse strings and would need to support many of the changes that you would actually want to implement? You have 1 minute.
Look, Margaret, first of all, the gross majority of what we need to do at the southern border is just empowering law enforcement to do their job. I've been to the southern border more than our borders are. Kamala Harris has been. And it's actually heartbreaking because the Border Patrol agents, they just want to be empowered to do their job. Of course, additional resources would help, but most of this is about the president and the vice president empowering our law enforcement to say, if you try to come across the border illegally, you've got to stay in Mexico, you've got to go back through proper channels. Now, Governor Walz brought up the community of Springfield, and he's very worried about the things that I've said in Springfield. Look, in Springfield, Ohio, and in communities all across this country, you've got schools that are overwhelmed, you've got hospitals that are overwhelmed, you have got housing that is totally unaffordable because we brought in millions of illegal immigrants to compete with Americans for scarce homes. The people that I'm most worried about in Springfield, Ohio, are the American citizens who have had their lives destroyed by Kamala Harris's open border. It is a disgrace, Tim, and I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
Senator, your time is up. Governor, you have 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, well, it is law enforcement that asked for the bill. They helped craft it. They're the ones that supported it. That's because they know we need to do this. Look, this issue of continuing to bring this up, of not dealing with it,
if you guys do not elect Kamala Harris and this man,
on housing,
I don't know what's wrong
we could talk a little bit about Wall Street speculators buying up housing and making them less affordable. But it becomes a blame. Look, this bill also gives the money necessary to adjudicate I agree. It should not take 7 years for an asylum claim to be done. This bill gets it done in 90 days. Then you start to make a difference in this, and you start to adhere to what we know, American principles. I don't talk about my faith a lot, but Matthew 25:40 talks about, to the least amongst us you do unto me. I think that's true of most Americans. They simply want order to it. This bill does it. It's funded. It's supported by the people who do it, and it lets us keep our dignity about how we treat other people.
For his campaign.
Thank you, Governor. And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy.
Margaret, the rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open.
That was 10 minutes. 10 minutes of Tim Walz and the moderators speaking clearly, very sober, factual, empirical data combined with some talking points based upon that data in a very sober, truthful, and easy to follow way. A normal way. And then you have J.D. Vance, you know, and if you watched the Midas Touch, you saw the email that they sent out before this debate saying, well, we're going to have the rigged debate with, Democrat Tim Walz, and we already know what they're going to do. They're going to do quote-unquote fact-checking. They put fact-checking in quotes. They said it's all going to be rigged. This is literally what they do. Before it even comes, it's going to be rigged. They don't accept, MAGA doesn't accept fact as fact. They don't accept reality as real. Like, it's like Joy Reid says, they are living on Earth too. So like I said, if you guys are voting Republican, I seriously feel bad for you, because there's a lot of Republicans right now who also have come out and said they're voting for a Democrat this year. They remain registered Republicans. They remain devoted being Republicans, but they know that these people are dangerous, you know. Like, this is the trek into authoritarianism over on the GOP side. So I just wanted to show that to you. There was really only one other thing that I wanted to show. Let me just see here.
We have so much we want to get to. Thank you for explaining the legal process. Nora.
Thank you, Margaret. The economy is a top concern for voters. Each of your campaigns has released an economic plan, so let's talk about the specifics. Governor Walz, Vice President Harris unveiled a plan that includes billions in tax credits for manufacturing, housing, and a renewed child tax credit. The Walton School says your proposals will increase the nation's deficit by $1.2 trillion. How would you pay for that without ballooning the deficit? Governor, I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. And Kamala Harris and I do believe in the middle class, because that's where we come from. We both grew up in that. We understand. So those of you out there listening tonight, you're hearing a lot of stuff back and forth, and it's good. It's healthy. That's what this is supposed to happen. You should be listening. How's this going to impact me? The bold forward plan that Kamala Harris put out there is talking about this housing issue. The one thing is, there's 3 million new houses proposed under this plan with down payment assistance on the front end to get you in a house. A house is much more than just an asset to be traded somewhere. It's foundational to where you're at. And then making sure that the things you buy every day, whether they be prescription drugs or other things, that there's fairness in that. Look, the $35 insulin is a good thing, but it costs $5 to make insulin. They were charging $800 before this law went into effect. As far as the housing goes, I've seen it in Minnesota. 12% more houses in Minneapolis, prices went down on rent 4%. It's working. And then making sure tax cuts go to the middle class. $6,000 child tax credit, we have one in Minnesota, reduces childhood poverty by 1/3. We save money in the long run, and we do the right thing for families. And then getting businesses off the ground. The law as it stands right now is $5,000 tax credit for small business, increasing that to $50,000. Now, this is a philosophical difference between us. Donald Trump made a promise, and I'll give you this, he kept it. He took folks to Mar-a-Lago, said, you're rich as hell, I'm going to give you a tax cut. He gave the tax cuts that predominantly went to the top class. What happened there was an $8 trillion increase in the national debt, the largest ever. Now he's proposing a 20% consumption or sales tax on everything we bring in. Everyone agrees, including businesses, it would be destabilizing it would increase inflation and potentially lead to a recession. Look, this is simple for you. Where are we going? Kamala Harris has said to do the things she wants to do. We'll just ask the wealthiest to pay their fair share. When you do that, our system works best, more people are participating in it, and folks have the things that they need.
Senator, I want to give you a moment to respond on that. But similarly, the Wharton School has done an analysis of the Trump plan and says it would increase the nation's deficit by $5.8 trillion.
So I think the cost
My question is the same for
Harris,
you.
I think was
How do you pay for all that
and for
without
for
ballooning the
GOP
deficit?
Is 5.
I'll give you 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, you're going to hear a lot from Tim Walz this evening, and you just heard it in the answer. A lot of what Kamala Harris proposes to do, and some of it, I'll be honest with you, it even sounds pretty good. Here's what you won't hear, is that Kamala Harris has already done it. Because she's...
You see that there? We can stop that right there. Like I said, I'm really not interested in listening to J.D. Vance and his baby version of Donald Trump, because it's just lies, you know? Like, Tim Walz just sat there, and he laid out a plan. 3 million new houses. Okay, we know that there's not enough housing in the U.S., and this is a problem that's been going on for decades. Donald Trump's side, they want to do nothing about it. They just want to continue to manipulate and sabotage the housing market because it benefits their rich cronies. Harris has started the work of this. They'll continue it. Well, not necessarily start it. I mean, the Democrats have been working on this for decades as well. You know, fighting up against. You see this type of stuff that's just metastasized to this point now. But Harris-Walz will continue that work by adding 3 million new houses. He just said it. They'll give housing assistance. They'll give tax credits to people who are having children for the first time. That's like us. If you're watching and you're around my age, please, y'all, if you're around my age and you're watching, younger, a little bit around my age, or if you have children who are around my age, please tell them to get out and vote, and hopefully vote blue, okay? I'm not... a public figure like a big, celebrity or anything. So I could go ahead and tell you what I think you should do. I think you should vote blue to save our democracy. The tax credits, the business credits, this is stuff that's actually going to help working class and middle class people, including Gen Z, Millennial, Gen X, and Alpha, even when they get a little bit older. This stuff is going to be stuff that sets down foundations for a generation. Donald Trump's side, they have no plan. You know, their only plan is attack. You heard J.D. Vance. He was asked the exact same question. He had no answer. So, guys, make sure you get out there and vote. Let's listen to this real quick.
Generation in this country. That is a record that I'm proud to run on, and we're going to get back to that common sense wisdom so that you can afford to live the American dream again. I know a lot of you are struggling. I know a lot of you are worried about paying the bills. It's going to stop when Donald Trump brings back common sense to this country.
Governor, do you want to respond to that?
They only got
Kamala Harris done for the middle class?
Yeah, well, Kamala Harris's day one was Donald Trump's failure on COVID that led to the collapse of our economy. We were already before COVID in a manufacturing recession, but 10 million people out of work, largest percentage since the Great Depression. 9 million jobs closed on that. That was day one. Whether it was the Infrastructure Act or other things we moved. Now, you made a question about experts, said this. I've made a note of this. Economists can't be trusted. Science can't be trusted. National security folks can't be trusted.
They don't trust any of the experts.
If you're going to be president, you don't have all the answers. Donald Trump believes he does. My pro tip of the day is this.
You don't have all the
answers. If you
need
heart surgery, listen to the people at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, not Donald Trump.
Right.
And the same thing goes with this. And I ask you out there, teachers, nurses, truck drivers, or whatever, how is it fair that you're paying your taxes every year and Donald Trump hasn't paid any federal tax in the last 15 years? In the last year as president. That's what's wrong with the system. There's a way around it, and he's bragged about that. We're just asking for fairness in it, and that's all you want.
You have a minute.
Governor, you say trust the experts. But those same experts for 40 years said that if we shipped our manufacturing base off to China, we'd get cheaper goods. They lied about that. They said if we shipped our industrial base off to other countries, to Mexico and elsewhere, it would make the middle class stronger. They were
Why don't we
wrong
solve it
about
together
that.
instead
They
of
were
you
wrong
guys
about
always
the idea
attacking?
that if we made
Take
America
your
less
lumps,
self-reliant,
okay? You lost this one, you lost
productive
2020,
in
try
our own
again in
nation, it would somehow
2028.
make us better off. And they were wrong about it. And for the first time in a generation, Donald Trump had the wisdom and the courage to say to that bipartisan consensus, we're not doing it anymore. We're bringing American manufacturing back. We're unleashing American energy. We're going to make more of our own stuff. And this isn't just an economic issue. I mean, I've got 3 beautiful little kids at home, 7, 4, and 2, and I love them very much, and I hope they're in bed right now. But look, so many of the drugs, the pharmaceuticals that we put in the bodies of our children are manufactured by nations that hate us. This has to stop, and we're not going to stop it by listening to experts. We're going to stop it by listening to common sense wisdom, which is what
we're not going to stop it by listening to experts.
Governor Walz, can you address that? I mean, voters say they trust Donald Trump on the economy more. Why?
If you're listening tonight and you want billionaires to get tax cuts, you heard what the numbers were.
Because they live in their echo chamber.
I'm a union guy on this. I'm not a guy who wanted to ship things overseas, but I understand that, look, we produce soybeans and corn. We need to have fair trading partners. That's something that we believe in. I think the thing that most concerns me on this is Donald Trump was the guy who created the largest trade deficit in American history with China. So the rhetoric is good. Much of what the senator said right there, I'm in agreement with him on this. I watched it happen too. I watched it to my communities, and we talked about that. But we had
diplomacy,
people undercutting the right to collectively bargain. We had right to work states made it more difficult. We had companies that were willing to ship it over, and we saw people profit. Folks that are venture capital in some cases, putting money into companies that were overseas. We're in agreement that we bring those home. The issue is Donald Trump is talking about it. Kamala Harris has a record, 250,000 more manufacturing jobs just out of the IRA.
May I respond to that?
Yes.
So appreciate that. So if you notice, what Governor Walz just did is he said, first of all, Donald Trump has to listen to the experts. And then when he acknowledged that the experts screwed up, he said, well, Donald Trump didn't do nearly as good of a job as the statistics show that he did. So what Tim Walz is doing, and I honestly, Tim, I think you got a tough job here. Because you've got to play whack-a-mole. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver rising take-home pay, which of course he did. You've got to pretend that Donald Trump didn't deliver lower inflation, which of course he did. And then you simultaneously got to defend Kamala Harris's atrocious economic record, which has made gas, groceries, and housing unaffordable for American citizens. I was raised by a woman who would sometimes go into medical debt so that she could put food on the table in our household. I know what it's like to not be able to afford the things that you need to afford. We can do so much better. To all of you watching, we can get back to an America that's affordable again. We just got to get back to common sense economic principles.
I hope we have a conversation on health care then.
Senator, Governor.
Please.
Thank you. Margaret?
We have a lot to get to ahead,
and you know Donald Trump just
on
wants
many
to
topics,
destroy
but right now I want to talk about personal qualifications. The Vice President is often the last voice.
We want to turn now to America's gun violence epidemic. The leading cause of death for children and teens in America is by firearms. Senator Vance, you oppose most gun legislation that Democrats claim would curb gun violence. You oppose red flag gun laws and legislation to ban certain semi-automatic rifles, including AR-15s. So let me ask you, earlier this year, for the first time, the parents of a school shooter were convicted of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Do you think holding parents responsible could curb mass shootings? I'll give you 2 minutes.
So we've got to make our schools safer, and I think we've got to have some common sense bipartisan solutions for how to do that.
Governor, you have 2 minutes.
Well, I think all the parents watching tonight, this is just your biggest nightmare. Look, I got a 17-year-old, and he witnessed a shooting at a community center playing volleyball. Those things don't leave you. As a member of Congress, I sat in my office surrounded by dozens of the Sandy Hook parents, and they were looking at my 7-year-old picture on the wall. Their 7-year-old were dead, and they were asking us to do something. And look, I'm a hunter. I own firearms.
You can
the Vice
still
President
support the Second Amendment.
We understand that the Second Amendment is there, but our first responsibility is to our kids to figure this out. In Minnesota, we've enacted enhanced red flag laws, enhanced background checks, and we can start to get data. But here's the problem. If we really want to solve this, we've got folks that won't allow research to be even done on gun violence. And this idea that we should just live with it. And here's what I do think, that this is a good start to the conversation. I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough when we know there are things that work. I've spent time in Finland and seen some Finnish schools. They don't have this happen, even though they have a high gun ownership rate in the country. There are reasonable things that we can do to make a difference. It's not infringing on your Second Amendment. And the idea to have some of these weapons out there, it just doesn't make any sense. Kamala Harris, as an attorney general, worked on this issue. She knows that it's there. No one's trying to scaremonger and say we're taking your guns, but I ask all of you out there, do you want your schools hardened to look like a fort? Is that what we have to go when we know there's countries around the world that their children aren't practicing these types of drills? They're being kids. We owe it to them to get a fix. These are things that shouldn't be that difficult. You can still keep your firearms, and we can make a difference. We have to. If you're listening tonight, this breaks your heart.
Senator.
Tim, first of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. And I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay. So. Christ have mercy. It is awful. And I appreciate what Tim said, actually, about Finland, because I do think it illustrates some of the frankly, weird differences between our own country's gun violence problem and Finland. Is, okay, first of all, we have way higher rates of mental health abuse or mental health substance abuse. We have way higher rates of depression, way higher rates of anxiety. We unfortunately have a mental health crisis in this country that I really do think that we need to get to the root causes of, because I don't think it's the whole reason why we have such a bad gun violence problem, but I do think it's a big piece of it. Another driver of the gun violence epidemic, especially that affecting our kids, it doesn't earn as many headlines, but is the terrible gun violence problem in a lot of our big cities. And this is why we have...
Senator Vance, you have said you would not have certified the last presidential election and would have asked the states to submit alternative electors. That has been called unconstitutional and illegal. Would you again seek to challenge this year's election results, even if every governor certifies the results? I'll give you 2 minutes.
Or rather, just losers.
First of all, I think that we're focused on the future. We need to figure out how to solve the inflation crisis caused by Kamala Harris's policies, make housing affordable, make groceries affordable, and that's what we're focused on. But I want to answer your question because you did ask
But
it.
he's still not going to answer
What President Trump has said is that there were problems in 2020, and my own belief is that we should fight about those issues, debate those issues peacefully in the public square, and that's all I've said, and that's all that Donald Trump has said. Remember, he said that on January the 6th, the protesters ought to protest peacefully. And on January the 20th, what happened? Joe Biden became the president. Donald Trump left the White House, and now, of course, unfortunately, we have all of the negative policies that have come from the Harris-Biden administration. I believe that we actually do have a threat to democracy in this country, but unfortunately, it's not the threat to democracy that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz want to talk about. It is the threat of censorship. It's Americans casting aside lifelong friendships because of disagreements over politics. It's big technology companies silencing their fellow citizens. And it's Kamala Harris saying that rather than debate and persuade her fellow Americans, she'd like to censor people who engage in misinformation. I think that is a much bigger threat to democracy than anything that we've seen in this country in the last 4 years, in the last 40 years. Now, I'm really proud, especially given that I was raised by two lifelong blue-collar Democrats, to have the endorsement of Bobby Kennedy Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong leaders in the Democratic coalition. And of course, they don't agree with me and Donald Trump on every issue. We don't have to agree on every issue.
Will you certify the election?
That's the question. Behind a basic American First Amendment principle that we ought to debate our differences. We ought to argue about them. We ought to try to persuade our fellow Americans. Kamala Harris is engaged in censorship at an industrial scale. She did it during COVID. She's done it over a number of other issues. And that, to me, is a much bigger threat to democracy than what Donald Trump said when he said that protesters should peacefully protest on January the 6th.
Governor?
Well, I've enjoyed tonight's debate, and I think there was a lot of commonality here, and I'm sympathetic to misspeaking on things, and I think I might have with the senator.
Me too, man.
There's one, though, that this one is troubling to me, and I say that because I think we need to tell the story. Donald Trump refused to acknowledge this, and the fact is that I don't think we can be the frog in the pot and let the boiling water go up. He was very clear. I mean, he lost this election, and he said he did. 140 police officers were beaten at the Capitol that day, some with the American flag. Several later died. And it wasn't just in there. In Minnesota, a group gathered on the state Capitol grounds in St. Paul and said, we're marching to the governor's residence and there may be casualties. The only person there was my son and his dog, who was rushed out crying by state police. That issue, and Mike Pence standing there as they were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Mike Pence made the right decision. So, Senator, it was adjudicated over and over and over.
It was
I worked with
adjudicated
kids long
over and
enough to
over.
know,
There was
and I
no
said as a
fraud.
football coach, sometimes you really want to win, but the democracy is bigger than
Thank
winning
you.
an election. You
Thank
shake
you, Tim
hands,
Walz.
and then you try and do everything you can to help
This
the
is
other
our
side
guy.
win. That's what was at
Kamala
stake
Harris
here.
is our
Now, the thing I'm
woman,
most concerned
and
about
this is our guy.
the idea that imprisoning your political opponents, already laying the groundwork for people not accepting this. And a president's words matter. A president's words matter. People hear that. So I think this issue of settling our differences at the ballot box, shaking hands when we lose, being honest about it, but to deny what happened on January 6th, the first time in American history that a president or anyone tried to overturn a fair election and the peaceful transfer of power. And here we are 4 years later in the same boat. I will tell you this, that when this is over, we need to shake hands this election,
When you lose,
and the winner
GOP,
needs to be
because
the
you
winner.
will.
This has got to stop. It's tearing our country apart.
Margaret?
Senator Vance, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, well, look, Tim, first of all, it's really rich for Democratic leaders to say
There's so
that
much
Donald Trump is a
hubris
unique
and
threat to
ego on
democracy
the GOP
when he
side.
peacefully
No humility.
gave over power on January the 20th, as we have done for 250
He
years in
didn't
this
hand over
country.
the power
We are
peacefully.
going to shake
Well,
hands
he did
after
in
this debate
2020.
and after this election. And of course, I hope that we win, and I think we're going to win. But if Tim Walz is the next vice president, he'll have my prayers, he'll have my best wishes, and he'll have my help whenever
hope
he
you stick to that.
wants it. But we have to remember that for years in this country, Democrats protested the results of elections. Hillary Clinton in 2016
Democrats ain't
said
never
that
had
Donald
no
Trump had the
insurrection.
election stolen by Vladimir Putin because the Russians bought like $500,000 worth of Facebook ads. This has been going on for a long time.
The Russians
and if we want
that
to say
Donald
that
Trump
we need to
colluded
respect
with,
the results of the election, I'm on board. But if we want to say, as Tim Walz is saying, that this is just a problem that Republicans have had, I don't buy that.
Governor.
January 6th was not Facebook ads. And I think a revisionist history on this. Look, I don't understand how we got to this point. But the issue was that happened. Donald Trump can do it. And all of us say there's no place for this. It has massive repercussions. This idea that there's censorship to stop people from threatening to kill someone, threatening to do something, that's not censorship. Censorship is book banning. We've seen that. We've seen that brought up. I just think for everyone tonight, and I'm going to thank Senator Vance, I think this is the conversation they want to hear. And I think there's a lot of agreement. This is one that we are miles apart on. This was a threat to our democracy in a way that we had not seen. And it manifested itself because of Donald Trump's inability to say. He is still saying he didn't lose the election. I would just ask that. Did he lose the 2020 election?
Tim, I'm focused on the future. Did Kamala Harris censor Americans from speaking their mind in the wake of the 2020 COVID situation?
That is a damning non-answer.
It's a damning.
And we'll leave it at there, guys. You know, this is just, I think that this is basically a preview of what we've got coming. You know, if you don't vote blue, if you don't vote Harris-Walz in this election, again, I have to say, I really don't know what's going on with you in your mental space and your social space, within your social circles. I don't know if you're dealing with mental health issues or addiction, if you've dealt with a loss recently, but I have a feeling, and again, I'm not a politician, I'm just some chick on YouTube, so this is just me talking. It's the real Najwa. But I have to ask if there's some emotional thing going on. Have you recently suffered a loss? Have you recently had a break from some relationships in your family? Did you go through some addictions? Did you go through some maybe financial burdens? Because if after all this time, you know, it's like when you're looking at a cult, and that's what the GOP is right now. I mean, they will destroy American democracy. They will destroy our reputation overseas. They will destroy our allyships. They will destroy, you know, relationships even with adversaries and push us to the brink of having to go into another Afghanistan or another Iraq. You know, this is where they are. They will have pregnancies being tracked, you know, people not being able to have abortions and being on a hit list or, you know, some sort of police register if they go and get an abortion or want to go get an abortion. They're going to have women bleeding out and dying in hospitals, you know, not being able to get the health care they need if they have some sort of pregnancy that goes wrong. They're going to have people, transgender people, just banned, canceled, essentially. They have books banned. You know, they're colluding with dictators in North Korea and Russia and China. Like, they're praising them. They're going to lose, okay? This is what's happening. They're going to lose, you know, because America doesn't want this. As much as many people in America do want this, and again, I have to ask, what's the emotional factor that's making you continue to support Donald Trump and the GOP at this moment in time, at this marker in time? The GOP can heal itself and run in 2028. It's okay. Take your lumps and try again in 2028. But if you're still supporting it at this time, I have to ask what's going on. But guys, if you are a Gen Z, a millennial, and you're voting and you're of voting age, please go to vote411.org to register to vote. We've only got a little bit less than 4 weeks now, okay? I think a little bit less than 4 weeks. Please, please, please register to vote and vote blue down the line. And not just this primary with the presidents, but also with Congress. You know, blue guys, we've got to take back the House to put Roe versus Wade back into place. Women should not be dying to get the health care that they need, okay? So I think Tim Walz, he did a great job. Yes, this debate was not as much, this debate didn't have as much pop, sizzle, fizz as the first one between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Kamala Harris is a completely different personality, you know, than Tim Walz. But Tim Walz is a solid VP pick. He is strong. He's got that gun ownership background, 2A all the way, but he wants to have gun-safe laws that protect our kids, that protect American citizens. He wants to take a look at mental health and social media. He wants to take a look at putting Roe versus Wade back into place. He wants to extend those tax credits to those of us, like I said, Gen Z and millennial, who are actually building our families. We're getting married, we're starting our families, we're trying to buy houses, we're trying to build business. They're going to help us. Donald Trump is going to continue to have us, you know, really struggling. I look around right now at my Gen Z and millennial people, and we're really struggling. So elect Donald Trump and JD Vance, and that it'll be that, but tenfold, and it'll be everyone. They will cut Social Security immediately if they get into office. So if you're older, if you're one of my older viewers, and you know, you have your pension, you have your retirement that you're relying on to basically live on in your golden years, that's going to be cut. Donald Trump will cut. Don't be mistaken. He will cut that the first chance he gets. If you live in rural America, babe, I was born in Birmingham, Alabama. I know rural America. Do not vote against your interests voting for this orange insane person. It's still time. There's still time. So guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Tim Walz totally won this debate. Marcus Johnson won the debate, but Tim Walz, he totally won this debate. JD Vance just talked absolute nonsense the whole time, and he still basically made it seem like he's a mini Donald Trump and saying he won't really accept that Donald Trump didn't win. And you know, I hope that he will make the same decision as Mike Pence, do the right thing to certify the election. And yeah, big one. But I mean, of course, not as many fireworks as the presidential debate, but I thought this was a great debate. And I actually even thought that JD Vance performed well, you know. It was a very sober debate. So I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. And again, if you're new here, hit that like, subscribe button, hit that bell so you know whenever I post a video. And I'll see you next time. Bye, guys. Bye.